further changing my voice, this video is extremely important. Again, I urge you to rally to me in Morgan Hill, California before it's too late so you can hear the words from my own mouth. What I believe. I know that there is one God and that I am not God. God is greater than I am. I do not do the miracles literally. Again, literally, that are said in the Bible. Okay, the miracles of my life, the miracles of the martial art challenge, the odds of somebody being chosen to be the top martial artist of all time is like a miracle when you're that person or you're somebody close to that person and you hear it and you know it's true. It is like a miracle in itself. There are things like this. Okay, there's things like being in the spirit of God and communicating with your ancestors in the spirit, in the martial arts spirit, which is a spirit that you can detect more clearly than a school spirit. Okay. So let's get to what I've written on this piece of paper now. I know that there is one God, and I do not believe I am God. God is greater than I am. And the Bible also says this. I know that God made my soul at some point, and that it was meant to rule all mankind forever. But first, I was meant to face this mission where people define who they are in life. So I'm meant to come here and see people define who they are, to define the foundation of the future at this point, right? You know, to this level of the pyramid of the future, if you will, for mankind. See what's going to happen in the future. How do they treat me? How do they treat each other? What do they do? What do they do with their lives, etc. Okay. They must prove themselves worthy to God to get to heaven by respecting God enough to obey me in a timely fashion. And we see this in the Bible. In their Bible it says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and don't do what I say? We see this in John 8. You're supposed to obey the commands. We see this in Proverbs. You're supposed to obey the king and not join with rebellious officials. The throne is established through justice and righteousness. And it goes back to my universal pinpoint and moral precision arguments and my focused moral intensity arguments, but I'm going to try to keep this short. Okay. So if you have any questions about those arguments, please put it in the comments. Better yet, rally to me in person. Okay. So they must prove themselves worthy to God to get to heaven by respecting God enough to obey me in a timely fashion. I believe that God is the source of the spirit, which is known by morally precise, royal African falcon, top martial artist, righteous acts, and justice. So how do we know it comes from God? Because it's righteousness and justice, and it's that top martial artist spirit that so many racist people and so many bootlickers seek to cover up. You know, it is that natural force of the top martial artist, the Royal African Falcon Martial Art Order, and it comes from black Africans. I personally do not care much about racial arguments or race in general, the flesh in general, but that is where it came through, and it's important that people understand that, and I think most people will believe right away when they hear it, okay, because it's pretty straightforward why that is. If any questions about that, put in the comments, okay? And then my desire for true love overkills that my spirit is from God. Again, I believe that God is the source of the spirit, which is known by morally precise, Royal African Falcon, top martial artist, righteous acts, and justice. And that my desire for true love overkills that my spirit is from God. In fact, I know this to be true for sure. True love must be derived from morally precise justice. And when I was younger, I was confused about who I am. And the Bible also agrees in Isaiah that this happens. It says something to the effects of, before he's old enough to know right from wrong, you know, he'll be doing X, Y, and Z, okay, before he's old enough to know right from wrong. So it says, when the Messiah comes, he's a child too at one point, and then he starts growing older and starts saying, hey, I'm the Messiah, and this is what I need to do, and so on and so forth. Okay. True love must be derived from morally precise justice. When I was younger, I was confused about who I am, and the Bible also agrees in Isaiah that this happens. This meant that my romantic pitch was not perfect, but over time it became perfect when I emphasized my true identity. As soon as I said, I'm Christ, and this is the proof, and the proof is overwhelming, and women didn't submit, Okay? My argument was perfect. The response was pathetic. You see what I'm saying? Pretty straightforward. And I have videos about that as well. Where we hear, okay. God's Spirit flows from Him through me, and in this sense I am the gate. As the logic for it to come another way to mankind does not even exist. So people can't argue that God's Spirit comes another way. There's no logic there. An unfocused airhead, some kind of control freak, some kind of person in a church that has been disgraced for a long, long time, what have you, the logic doesn't exist. Okay? So whatever they're seeing, they logically know isn't God's Spirit, because you need that logic there. You see what I mean? You wouldn't try to drink dirt off the ground, for example, because the logic doesn't exist. Okay? God isn't going to reveal Himself to people in a way where the logic doesn't exist. It's illogical. Okay? You wouldn't say a pile of dirt is God, because that's not logical. You wouldn't expect everyone to bow down to a pile of dirt, because that's not logical. You wouldn't expect people to go to church and expect the Spirit of God, because that's not logical. The logic doesn't exist there. Everyone knows churches are evil centers. Okay? This has to be said, you get it. God is not deceptive. The logical way to be good in reality is the logical way to serve God. So how do you serve God? You come into the moral order, right? You don't cheat me out of my right to lead. Okay, the logical way to be good in reality is the logical way to serve God. It's just a matter of writing down your thoughts and saying, hey, if I do this and I do that, what will happen? What about the long-term generational justice? What does it mean to follow this person, that person, what have you? And you come to the conclusion that I'm right. So some people aren't capable of the logic, and their racism prevents them or whatever. They have to have mental clarity and figure out the logical way, and it cannot be done after I die. We'll get into that. There is no way to serve God after I die, as the logic does not exist, and God would not forsake me and all the righteous that have died by allowing people who not only are from the families that rebelled against God, but from the family that rebelled against God the most, but even now mock God by interfering with me doing this work and seeking to take credit for what I have done with all sorts of underhanded tactics. Again, there is no way to serve God after I die, as the logic does not exist, and God would not forsake me and all the righteous that have died by allowing people who not only are from the families that rebelled against God the most, but even now mock God by interfering with me doing His work and seeking to take credit for what I have done with all sorts of underhanded tactics. At times they are complex tactics. Okay, so they try to do some more complex tactics in my series and try to confuse things more, and they do some kind of basic tactics so they can be like, oh, you got that, and then they try to slip one, by you while you think you know all their tactics. You see what I'm saying? I believe that the works of other people clearly show that the churches basically all know that they are in rebellion against God and seek to make it so that people serve the governing class and them, and the church, and wherever else they're trying to get them to serve. I know that people have no right to be mad at me because what I say is true. This is the most important time possible in human history, and people above the age of 12 or so all basically know that the churches and basically all other people lie about God. My top martial arts outdoor sparring challenge, which was made in spite of technologically advanced sabotage with 22 witnesses on record in my videos, goes far beyond David and Goliath and is the last valid martial arts challenge ever possible, and it still continues even now. Everything has happened for a reason, just like the sun was made for a reason. I am the most victorious person that I've ever lived for a reason, and people should come into my spirit before it's too late and enter through the gate of heaven. And keep in mind, I have thousands of videos over many channels. Some of these channels have, maybe over 1,000 subscribers. Okay, over the years that refer to my top martial arts challenge. Okay, there's no way for me to suppress these videos. Any suppression would come from the state, and as everyone else basically obeys the corporate state, that is their way of conceding that I'm the top because they've accepted the boundaries of the world, and their masters have determined to suppress any videos that are suppressed. However, There are thousands and thousands and thousands, perhaps millions of people by now, almost certainly millions by now, because this is a pretty important challenge, that are aware of my top martial arts challenge. Okay, and the word of mouth and all that, and spreads it to some degree, and I've handed out flyers and things of this nature. Okay, and commented on thousands and thousands of videos over the years since the challenge was made December 20th, 2013. Where was I here? Everything has happened for a reason, just like the sun was made for a reason. I am the most victorious person that ever lived for a reason, and people should come into my spirit before it is too late and enter through the gate of heaven. Hopefully now you see that my religion isn't Christianity, but rather morally precise logic from God. You see, I use the Bible to say, hey, you know what? You can't say I'm crazy, because the Bible and the Torah, and certainly the Quran to some extent, all say something similar. Okay, it's just in a riddle form. It's lost in translation. It's spread out in a thick book, and so on and so forth. It's all pointing to me, just in a very complex way. And there's all kinds of fundamentalist fanatics who don't want to admit that these books are first and foremost a story with morals. They are a formula. They are the blueprint for understanding who the divine order is, and just like Jesus says in the Bible, which by default means the Quran, the Muslims and the Christians both have to understand that refinement, and the Jews have to consider that, because it's an interpretation of the Old Testament events, where he says the kingdom of heaven will be taken away from you as part of the moral of the Old Testament, right? And given to a people that will perform its works. So he's talking about the spirit of the alpha chosen person of God, and not the spirit of the Jewish people by their flesh. So he who sits on the throne of David is he who's in the spirit that David is superimposed on in the story, and not a literal flesh-based offspring. And we see that in Galatians 3:28. It's also there in Galatians 4, subtly and otherwise. Okay. Like the sun is something that is designed to do its job, I was made by God to do the job assigned to me, which is to seal mankind in hell forever and to complete the top martial artist challenge. Only a complete idiot would deny that I've done this, and only a complete lunatic who lives in the essence of disgrace would seek to take my credit. So as it stands right now, all who don't scramble to obey God through me are damned to hell. So no matter what happens now, mankind after I die is damned to hell, unless those people obeyed me in a timely fashion, but their offspring, okay, are damned if they have any, okay, and nobody can continue to redeem people after I'm gone. That's it, okay. The Redeemer had to be in the flesh, okay, and it's a bit complicated why that is, and the Bible confuses this, and it's a long story what they're doing in regards to that, and there's a lot to it. I don't know every detail of every riddle in the Bible, but I know enough to have proven this definitively. Okay, all right, so only a complete idiot would deny that I've done this, and only a complete idiot who lives in the essence of disgrace would seek to take my credit. If one sees me in person at this time, they can see that I was made by God in a way that goes beyond other people, and my heritage and lineage makes this clear. Though fumes and poisons were used to cover this up to a certain degree, they also edited my videos and slowed down my martial art demonstrations and distorted them. The Bible ends with Jesus waging war with righteousness and justice in spirit, and the part about the birds eating the flesh was put there to make a solid connection to David and Goliath. The word overcome was used in at least one translation when Goliath challenged the Jews, and Jesus said, "Take heart, I've overcome the world." God put all of them into his hands, into Goliath's hands at the moment, except David in the story. God has put all of the world into my hands, and this is the spiritual end of humanity on earth. Okay, those in the flesh. You see Isaiah 57, the righteous are taken away to be spared from evil. But those of you who keep reading, those of you who are the children of theater arts propaganda, they call it a son of a sorceress, the prostitute, the road to the beast. Those of you who are the children of folly that multiplied the unfaithful among men, who chose to keep reading even though you knew it was wrong. You don't have to be a Christian to know it's wrong. You don't have to listen to my videos to know it's wrong. You know not to breed. You know what you're doing is extremely evil, okay? And you will have to pay those spiritual consequences, and you pay certain consequences while you're here on earth. As the story goes, worldly life, that is worldly life, is a bitch. Thank you.